Welcome back to Hardball. Rick Perry, who's still running for president, clarified his position on the president's citizenship in the wake of big-name Republicans warning him that the birther route is not a winning strategy. Just yesterday, former Republican Governor Jeb Bush of Florida emailed the Washington Post to say, quote, Republican candidates should categorically reject the notion that President Obama was not born in the U.S. It is a complete distraction from the failed economic policies of the president. Well, the birther talk may win over right-wing conservatives, but is it winning a path to the presidency? Willie Brown served as mayor of San Francisco. Michael Eric Dyson is a professor at Georgetown University. Mr. Brown, thank you for joining us, Mr. Mayor. And Professor, thank you. This is something that we thought was dead as a rat, somewhere down in the basement, down in the eaves somewhere. Mr. Brown, it's back again. It just seems to be the weird little instinct. Here's Rick Perry, by the way, in his own defense, in an interview with the St. Pete Times, where he tried to clean up, I guess, his birther comments. Let's see if we can follow his thought process, such as that it is. Let's listen.
Jeb Bush the other day said Republican candidates for president should categorically reject the notion that Barack Obama was not born in America. This came after you expressed doubts about that. What would you say?
I don't think I was expressing doubts. I was having some fun with Donald Trump. So I mean, that's a great. Oh yeah, and look, it's fun to lighten up a little bit.
So you have no doubt he's an American citizen.
I have no doubt about it. But here's the more interesting thing. Let's lay out our income taxes. Let's lay out our college transcripts. Mine's been on the front page of the paper.
So let's all call each other illegal immigrants and have a yuck about it. Mr. Brown, Mayor, what do you make of that defense, which was all just in fun?
Oh, that's typical of Rick Perry. Rick Perry is not ready for prime time, Chris. He literally is a fellow Texan who should have remained in Texas in every way because his thought processes are pretty much restricted to that state. And under those circumstances, he can't make the presidency, period.
Why would they buy his act, which seems like buffoonery, on issues of importance like secession from the Union and saying we don't need the Voting Rights Act in the South and we should have never had the constitutional justification for the Civil Rights Act? And then he just steps back from it like I was just sort of speculating, free thinking. How does he get away with that in the state of Texas?
Well, nobody takes him seriously when he says those kinds of things. That's not really why they elected him. They just couldn't buy his opponents, period. And they didn't hold him to the highest of standards of which you should hold a person who wants to be the governor. That's just the way my state, my home state, happens to be at the moment. Is that why you
fled it?
Well, yes and
as a young man. Anyway, I know you grew
left
up
there for other reasons, too.
I know, I can imagine. You grew up as a son of sharecroppers, so you had it tough. And look what you've done. I mean, amazing. What a story. Let me ask Professor Dyson about this thing. I think it has to do with not just race, which is always sitting out there, but it has to do with some sense of always getting the little yuck in there that Obama's not one of us. He's not really American. He's somehow, even though he was born in Hawaii and somehow he's raised by a white mother in an interesting sort of sophisticated circumstance, went to good schools. We should be proud of his success. He's somehow exotic.
Yeah, there's no question about it. There's a kind of besmirching of his character. There's a suggestion he's not quite us. He's not one of us. He's not inside the circle. He's not inside the parameters of our humanity. To have a joke at the expense of Barack Obama's citizenship when this was such a bitterly divisive kind of argument in America shows that not only is Rick Perry out of touch with reality, but he has gross insensitivity to the extraordinary processes by which people are either labeled as something that is negative or that they're celebrated. And I think that the problem here is that Rick Perry is tone deaf. And being tone deaf, I agree with, Mayor Brown that this is a guy who doesn't understand the fundamentals of what it takes to be a president. Not only is he not ready for prime time, my God, he can't even be the backup quarterback.
You know what? I may beat you to the punch on this. I think he's got a dog whistle the size of a bugle. This guy knows what he's doing. Let's go now to Mayor Brown. I want to ask you about that. Here's Haley Barbour, who has got whatever his background down there is, some Dixiecrat background way down there. But boy, is he smart. He says not to run on this. He's not running, but he's issuing a warning to Republicans to state. When asked about the birther issue, he said, quote, look, if this election is about Barack Obama's policies and the results of those policies, Barack Obama is going to lose. Any other issue that gets injected in this campaign is not good for the Republicans. Republicans should want this election to be what American presidential elections have always been, a referendum on the incumbent's record. Barack Obama cannot win his second term term running on his record, 0 chance. So anybody who talks about anything else is off subject. That is a political expert's view.
I had dinner with Haley Barbour, and I got to tell you, though, I couldn't get out of him why he is not a candidate in the Republican primary. I think he would be as viable, if not more viable, than any of the other candidates that are already out there, and I think he has greater staying power than any of them because he's a very intelligent, very well-informed person in America.
I agree.
And believe me, I think the Republicans ought to be looking around for a different horse, and Haley could be it.
Let's take a look at a Tea Party rally last night where Herman Cain spoke. A man named Apostle Claver called the Democratic Party racist. Cain was not in the audience, but he was in the back room, apparently. Here's a portion of Claver's remarks.
If anybody is a racist, it's the Democratic Party that's the racist. The party of the Ku Klux Klan. The party of Jim Crow. The party of Bull Connor, the party of segregation, the party of the KKK. They're the racists, not us. We're their friends. We're the emancipators.
I don't think this guy caught on to the Southern strategy of 1968, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
He's back there before the Southern strategy, a little out of date in his diatribe, I think. Your thoughts?
I think he's absolutely out of date. He cannot, for the life of me, understand why he would say that in the last 30 years, that in fact the Democratic Party has reflected any of the kind of characteristic that he talked about as a party. They have not. The Democratic Party at one time controlled the South. Once Ronald Reagan started his Southern strategy, the Democratic Party lost control of the South, and that's because the Democratic Party was pursuing civil rights, civil liberties, equality, and all the things that are reflective of our U.S. Constitution. The South couldn't handle that, particularly those who call themselves Democrats. They went fleeing to the Republican Party, and that's where they are. I don't maintain, however, that turned the Republican Party into a racist party because I don't think it is a racist party. After all, it was Nixon who really implemented the whole business of some equality on the economic side with George Shultz and others in the Philadelphia Plan and Arthur Fletcher. And so clearly, it is not the case to say Republicans are the racists, but believe me, those who left the Democratic Party who were racist have ended up in the Republican Party.
You have just shown us the history that is so fascinating. We ought to have a discussion sometime what Richard Nixon did. Even though he did the Southern strategy, he created affirmative action in the Philadelphia Plan. Amazing. I think he was out to screw the unions myself, by the way, the reason he did that. Because all these Irish and Italian guys didn't want black workers. They wanted their nephews to get the jobs. He said, I'll divide these guys up. Anyway, that's just my theory of Nixon. Anyway, thank you, Willie Brown. Thank you, sir. And I thank you, Michael Eric Dyson. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.